Hello everybody, Mancave Dave in Wisconsin here with the second video in my autograph collection series. I'm talking about the stuff along the second wall. My last video I talked a little bit about my Guns N' Roses wall over here, so we'll start right in. So first thing I have here is a 3 picture disc and 3 CDs signed by some of the guys at Savatage. And so we have John Oliva, right here, and then Johnny Lee Middleton, who's the bassist. John Oliva was lead singer and does some other stuff, keyboards and that kind of stuff. And then up here we got John Oliva, Johnny Lee Middleton, and Chris Caffrey, who was a guitarist for Savatage. So Savatage was formed in, I believe, the late 70s, and reason I found out about them is I was a big fan, or am a big fan, of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and that band actually came from Savatage. Chris Caffrey and Johnny Lee Middleton, John Oliva, all these guys worked to start the TSO band. Anyway, kind of melodic metal, sad story. John Oliva, his brother Chris, was the guitarist and was killed by a drunk driver, and that's when Chris Caffrey took the place for lead guitar. But I had a chance to meet John at a record store called The Exclusive Company in Greenfield, Wisconsin by Milwaukee, and then met Chris Caffrey and Johnny Lee Middleton at the first spring TSO show in Milwaukee, and they signed these for me. And John even gave me a hard time about the Fight for the Rock album, because that's probably his least favorite out of all of them. But it was good-natured, it was fun. And then down here, we have Coheed and Cambria, signed by the entire band. I met them at Summerfest in Milwaukee. They did a signing sponsored by 102.1, which is a great Milwaukee radio station. And then Rage Against the Machine, Evil Empire. This was one of my favorite albums in high school. I still remember hearing Bulls on Parade for the first time and just what an impact that song had on me. This is signed by Tom Morello. He was in Madison for a pro-union concert with some other folks, Wayne Kramer from MC5 and Tim McIlrath from Rise Against. And afterwards, all the guys came out and signed stuff, so I had a chance to meet him, which was pretty cool. Down here, it's kind of hard to see, but Jackyl, signed by Jesse James Dupree, the lead singer, and some of the other guys. I think Jesse was a little bit drunk. His signature is a little bit hard to read. You can kind of see it right here. But it was a fun show. Anytime you end a concert with someone sawing a bar stool in half with the chainsaw, it's a good night. Poison, signed by Bret Michaels, and also this album signed by him. Met him at the after show party after a Poison concert in Appleton area, and Big John, his friend and bodyguard or whatever, took us out to meet him and had this stuff signed, which is pretty cool. Cinderella, signed by the band, or 3 of the guys. Actually didn't meet these guys in person. I've met them at different times, but not to get this signed. This is something I got online. And after checking out the signatures and making sure they're authentic, I went ahead and got it. I just love the look of the album, especially with the signatures on it. And contrasting that is Great White. I saw these guys out in California for a rock fest, and meet and greet afterwards. All of them were nice enough to sign it for me. So we got Jack Russell and Audie, Mark Kendall on guitar. I can't remember these guys, their names, so my apologies to all the Great White fans out there. Down here, Soul Asylum. Saw them in Milwaukee. They played a casino out there. Signed by Dave, the lead singer, and a few other folks. Unfortunately, I apologize to all the Soul Asylum fans out there. I'm not a big Soul Asylum guy. I enjoy the music, but not as familiar with who all is in the band. I know the drummer didn't sign, but had a chance to meet 2 of the other guys, the lead singer, and then Tommy Stinson was there filling in on bass for him, and he signed it for me as well, even though he didn't play on the album. Firehouse, love me some Firehouse. Great 90s band, as many of you probably know. Actually, their debut album right here beat out, I want to say, Alice in Chains for top new metal album back in the early 90s for Grammy, I think, which is kind of mind-blowing now. But Firehouse is a great show. I've seen them a couple of times in Appleton as well as in Middleton, in a place called Scats. It's no longer in business, and it's one of those bands that they sound exactly like they do on their album live, which is just awesome. So all the guys are real cool and signed afterward. Up here we have Shinedown. Met them at Summerfest. before the guy here on the far left actually quit the band. So they all signed, and then also the 3 CDs that were out at the time, all of them signed the CD and the cover as well, so that's pretty cool. Jackyl again. When I bought this record, I'd never seen it before, so I went ahead and picked it up. I pulled out the vinyl, and it was actually signed by Jesse James Dupree back in, it looks like, '96. So I can't verify that signature, but again, with my research, pretty sure it's legit. And then they all signed it at the show I was at. Again, Jesse was pretty drunk, so his signature looks a little less than desirable, but still kind of cool to meet him and have that story. This was something that was given to me. Somebody made it, and they had a signed Jani Lane, former lead singer of Warrant, rather, signed it. Looks like in 2000, and then they put some fun paper behind it and cut out a CD piece and put it on there. Anyway, had a chance to see Warrant at the Back Bar, which is just a great venue in Janesville, Wisconsin. Highly recommend y'all check it out. Bob, the owner, and his wife Diane have a lot of great bands that come there. So Warrant stopped through on their way up to Oshkosh for Rockfest, and before the show, hanging out with them, and they signed a bunch of stuff, and it's kind of funny that they're all like, "Oh, dude, did you make this?" And I'm kind of laughing to myself because it definitely looks like something that a 16-year-old girl would make. Like, "Oh, Warrant, they're so awesome! Oh my goodness!" And here I am, a big dude in my 30s. Like, no, guys, I didn't make it. I'm glad you enjoy it, but they were pretty fun and signed it for me. So, kind of sad that I never got to meet Jani Lane. I have a chance to hear him sing live, and real tragedy that he passed away the way he did. So, but Warrant. Down here, a little bit harder to see the Gaslight Anthem. I had a chance to see them a couple of times behind the 3DO. So this is one of their LPs that all the guys signed for me after one of their shows in Milwaukee. We have Quiet Riot. Saw them at the Back Bar. Similar to Jani Lane, I'd never had a chance to see Quiet Riot with the original lead singer before he passed away. This is their newest incarnation of the band, but just sounded great. So you got Frankie Benali, their drummer in the middle, Alex Grossi, the guitarist, bottom right. I can't remember if it's Chip, but bassist, rather, top left, and then the new lead singer on the far right, which his name is slipping my mind. But Alex even gave me his pick afterwards, so that was pretty cool. Public Enemy, Chuck D from Public Enemy came to Marquette while I was there and did a talk on the music industry, which was just fascinating. So he signed a couple of these for me. This one says "To Super Dave," and down here, apologize, it's between the Nintendo game rack, but this is one of my favorite albums growing up. The song "Give It Up" was on here, which is again very impactful on me in my younger years. Down here, a little bit harder to see, but Alice Cooper. I shared in my Guns N' Roses video how I met him, and so this is one of the other albums that he signed for me, Billion Dollar Babies. And I know it's hard to see over here, but Guster, they came to Marquette while I was there, and signed this album for me, one of the several albums of theirs that they signed. Tesla, this is one of the first albums, in fact, this is the first album that got my autograph collection going. Saw them in Milwaukee, and again, all the guys came out afterwards and signed, and were hanging out with us in the parking lot. And so that was pretty cool to meet them and start meeting bands that I really liked and that made music that I cared about. People in Plains, met them after a show in Milwaukee at the Rave. I got a set list, some CDs, put on by 1021. Really liked their sound. I believe they're from England or somewhere overseas, but just really, really cool. Highly recommend you check them out. Powerman 5000. I'm not a dancer, but I couldn't not bob my head to this show. Powerman 5000, signed by all the guys, Velcro, Spider One, just awesome show. Their album On the Other Side of Nowhere, here, somewhere on the other side of nowhere. Just a great album as far as just rocking out. So, Powerman 5000. Trans-Siberian Orchestra, after their shows, they usually do a meet and greet, and so these are some of their albums signed by John Oliva, as well as some of the other band members here and there. So there's just a whole bunch of people in the band, so it's kind of hard to point out individual signatures, although in the middle of this one, with Chris Oliva's guitar in the back, you can see John Oliva's signature. 3 Days Grace, sponsored by 1021 and the Exclusive Company in Milwaukee. when they had a couple of CDs out, they did a meet and greet and got to meet them and sign a bunch of stuff. And what else we got here? Atmosphere, a great hip-hop group out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I think it's Minneapolis. But DJ Slug, the lead MC, did a meet and greet at the exclusive company, so he signed some albums. Motorhead, I've seen them a couple of times, and man, their mantra of everything louder than everything else is not kidding. I forgot my earplugs for the first show, and so had to exit the venue and actually stand in the lobby. It was crazy. But this is signed by Lemmy Kilmister, and Phil, the guitarist. Phil wasn't actually on this album, but it was fairly early in my autograph collecting, and so I asked him if he'd sign it anyway, and he was like, "Sure, mate," and so he did. Let's see, got the clock. Ratt, met Stephen Pearcy back in 2009. He did a show on, I think it was a Mother's Day, because there was like 30 people there. But it was a fun show, and afterwards he invited us all back to the green room and signed albums for everybody. So I got several Ratt albums signed. Another Guster album signed at their show in Milwaukee. And then, okay, try not to judge me too much, but I got free tickets to a Hey Monday show. They had a bunch of these teeny bopper bands, and so afterwards they all signed. So we've got The Bigger Lights, Hey Monday, and what was it, Stereo Skyline? Yeah, whatever. Moving on. Guster poster from the show I went to, signed. And then this actually is stuff that got signed at Adler's Appetite show. And so here we've got Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses, Michael Thomas from Faster Pussycat on lead guitar, Alex Grassi on rhythm guitar. He was a little drunk that day. His signature's kind of messed up. Chips Enough on bass from Enough Is Enough. And then we got some singles down here. We got Patience single signed by Adler, Paradise City single signed by Adler, and then a couple of CD booklets. So Use Your Illusion 2 signed by Adler, and The Live Era signed by Adler, and Gilby Clarke when I met him one of the times. Just some random stuff signed by some bands that I got free tickets to. Doth, which is a heavier metal band. Joan Red, which seems to be more of a up-and-coming band, and then Royal Bliss. So they were fun. Not necessarily, bands that I was like, oh my gosh, I have to see them again, but good stuff. One of the bigger pride and joys that I have is this right here, B.B. King. My wife and I went and saw him in Milwaukee on November 13th, 2010, and when the show was wrapping up, he sits on stage and people bring stuff up and he kind of points them out, and his musicians go out and bring stuff up and he signs it. And so I had this record and I was trying to get his attention, but he had a thing for the ladies. B.B. King, you the man. And so this pretty girl in the front row saw me trying to get his attention. She's like, hey, motion for me, send me hand me your record. So I did. And as soon as she got it, he pointed at her, and the guy came and grabbed it and he signed it and gave it back to her, and she gave it back to me. And I was like a kid on Christmas. I couldn't believe it. I have a B.B. King signed album, which is just pretty epic to me. Saw Rise Against with Alkaline Trio and Thrice, and afterwards I was the only guy waiting out by the bus. I felt a little strange about that, but whatever. So they signed a few albums for me. So Appeal to Reason picture disc. Actually, Joe, his signature got kind of messed up. I think he was trying to keep it on the spindle and not get it on the vinyl, but you can see it just doesn't look how it should. Like here's what his signature usually looks like, and here's what it looked like here. But oh well, what can you do? I appreciate he was trying not to jack up the vinyl. So that's kind of a cool poster there. Also saw Avenged Sevenfold while the Rev was still alive, and waited out a long time by the bus, but the guys finally came out. And so it was kind of raining that night, and so the marker didn't stick too well, but we got M Shadow signed, and then the Rev, which you can really see the Rev, and then I think this was Johnny Christ, the bassist, but didn't really stick too well. But I was really sad to hear about the Rev passing, and just one of those things that, rock and roll, love the music, but the lifestyle can really be rough on you. So it kind of took me a minute to step back from that and realize, wow, that person I just shook hands with not too long ago passed away. But anyway, this is part 2 of my autograph collection. I hope you all have enjoyed it. And I actually need to clean up the man cave now. My son, who's 15 months old, is down for nap time, and was down here playing and destroyed some of the man caves. I have some picking up before part 3. But thanks for watching. See you all at the next sale, and we'll see you out at the next show. Peace out.